Hello everybody, and today I'm going to be taking a look at probably the weirdest, okay, not the weirdest, I own weirder, so I think I'll use a better term, the most obscure computer I own. And I mean obscure because this thing doesn't really get much love in Japan or America or whatever. Okay, there's computers that get even less love, like the Fujitsu FMR, but this one really doesn't get any love for a good reason. This computer is essentially to the PC-98 line what the PS2 is to the IBM PC. This is the NEC PC-H98, which is an obscure and sort of forgotten about MS-DOS workstation. So this computer was essentially the most advanced version of the higher-end, high-resolution PC-98 series. And I mean that because on the front here, there's a switch labeled H and N, and it's labeled right up there. But you can switch it to H, which is a high-resolution boot mode and has a different memory map, and N, which is the regular PC-98 backwards compatibility mode. And a lot of PC-98 programs require you to actually boot the system in N, and then the system will automatically switch over to high-resolution mode for high-resolution video. So this is a PC-98 that was very expensive, but it was pretty capable for its time. It had a 486 processor in 1992. It had a high-resolution video system built right in. But the problem was this video system could not be added to a lower-end PC-98. So what happened was this video system wound up orphaned and only in the handful of PC-H98 models. And not even the H98S, just the H98. Along with the SV-H98, which was a server version, and I think some of the other computers such as the OP98, and also the N5200s, which were a sort of incompatible business computer that ran a different operating system entirely, but shared a lot of architecture and components with the PC-98 series. So, let's talk about this because there's a lot of interesting PC-98 quirks and features I thought I'd show you. The first being the floppy drives. Now, the floppy drives on these things have levers that pull out. And I can't get this one out without a screwdriver that well, but these levers pull out. And these levers basically clip onto the drives, and that's because the faceplate is the drive it's the drive bracket. Kind of like later 3.5-inch drives, but here's the cool part about these H98s, or not H98s, PC-98s with these floppy drives, because a lot of PC-98s had these 5.25-inch drives. You can put the disk in, and then here's what's cool about it, is when the system is running and it's, when you turn the lever down, it'll actually start reading the disk, but if there's no disk in the drive or the lever's up, it won't even try to read the disk. And then when you eject the disk, it actually pops it out just a little bit so you can pull the disk out. Pretty cool, isn't it? But that's not the only cool thing about these PC-98s. The other cool thing about these PC-98s is that you've got a PC speaker volume, and that's because this sound card has a cable where you can actually connect it to the speaker. And then we've got a reset switch, a keyboard and a mouse port on the front of the computer. I mean, the PC-98s were sort of a successor to... Actually, no, these weren't even a successor. These were around at the same time, stuff like the PC-88 was. And as a tradition, they kept the keyboard port in the front of the machine for the longest time, and the same with the mouse. And worth noting is that the PC-H98 was also one of the first PC-98s to move from a weird 9-pin male bus mouse connector to the round Microsoft Import mouse connector, because that's what this thing takes, are Microsoft Import mice. Let's take a look at the side. Let's take a look at the side real quick. So, I've done a modification to this. As you can tell, the power supply is gone because the power supply failed. And this was the only PC-H98 on Yahoo Japan, was one with the power supply failed. And it had been sitting on there for ages. I'm like, well, I'll buy it. And so I find out the power supplies failed. And so my fix for it, instead of trying to resolder it, was to just take the wiring, cut it off, heat shrink one of those StarTech ATX adapters, and then solder on a power switch. Because this is soft power, right? This is a soft power machine in the 90s. And that was because, believe it or not, one of the ways you could turn this thing on was through the monitor power switch. Can you believe that? So there was a lithium battery that was non-rechargeable, that was a tube that went right here. I just soldered in a coin cell holder and wired it up here, because this was originally a remote wire anyway. So I just went on Amazon and I got a cheap coin cell wire, and it works just fine for our purpose. Hasn't drained yet, and it's been a month or two, so that's good. So that's the video board, presumably, and then right below it is the motherboard. And then this is the C-bus cage. And I'll show you what's cool about C-bus in a second. So C-bus. What is C-bus, you might be asking? Well, C-bus is the PC-98 expansion bus. And this was the expansion bus for every PC-98 up until the end. Okay, a few PC-98s did not have this externally. The laptops did not have it externally. The Cereb models only had a single PCI slot that was taken up by an MPEG board, so you can watch your DVDs of American Psycho and Drive on there instead. But other than the Cereb models, which only had that MPEG board, you had the you had all these expansion slots, so you could pop in cards that you wanted. And every PC-98 had C-bus. The later PC-98s also added PCI as well. But C-bus has a cool advantage that PCI does not. And I'll show you what it is. So we've got our expansion slots here. There's an expansion slot cover. There's a empty bay. We've got ourselves a network card. And we've got ourselves a sound card. The cool part about C-bus is you can just slide cards right in. But the PC-H98 also has an additional expansion slot that shares the same port as C-bus does. So here's the unique part about the expansion cage on the PC-H98 models. It features both C-bus, which is the original PC-98 expansion bus, but it also features its own new expansion bus called NESA. So NESA was essentially the same thing as EISA or MCA, but on the PC-H98 series. And only the H98 series, because this never trickled down to the regular PC-98s or the Epson clones. Neither of them actually touched this expansion bus. In fact, the A-mates, which replaced this series, actually featured their own expansion bus as well. I think it was like called Local Bus or something, but it was this special it was this PC-9821 A-mate expansion bus, just like how this wound up only being the PC-H98 expansion bus. But just like the IBM PS2s, it needs a reference disk. However, I don't think you need any special files on the reference disk because I don't have the documentation, but if you plug in a card that's NESA, it will actually recognize what card it's supposed to be and automatically configure it. While with the C-bus cards, you have to either key in what you want or you have to load it off the disk, or the definition for each card off the disk. But it is backwards compatible with any C-bus card, to my knowledge. I've used newer SCSI cards on this thing, like this one, which is from the late 90s, as opposed to the original SCSI card, which still works with pretty decent sized hard disks. So how this works is there's actually two separate connectors, and I'll show you in a second. So right on the bottom you can see that there's the C-bus, and it plugs into that edge connector, but above it is the NESA connector. And I've seen differing names for this. Usually it's called NESA, but I've also seen this on the Wikipedia page called the E-bus but it's backwards compatible because I've got a 9821 26K with the YM2203 plugged right in there. So let's get back to this a bit because this is still pretty interesting. So basically, here's the cool thing that sets the PC-98 series apart from the competition expansion-wise with C-Bus, because I'm going to show you it now. So if you've ever seen those old HP laser jets, you already know how the expansion cards slide right in. And this is the same way. I'm going to use this NESA card as an example because I'm going to be popping this back in anyway. If you wanted to install an expansion card or remove it, you don't have to open the computer up. You can just slide it right in. And NESA has a better connector than C-Bus does, because those C-Bus Edge connectors are like ISA connectors. They like to just let the whole card get stuck in there, or you have to even get the card in, you have to rock it back and forth. You don't have to do that with NESA because it's this brand new improved connector that unfortunately NEC never really expanded on. But then again, they never really expanded on it to begin with outside of the H98. So I heard a story that one of the reasons for this was because NESA wasn't much faster than C-Bus was. And then, of course, there was the whole thing with PCI around the corner. And when PCI came out, PC-98s implemented it. And unfortunately, being PCI, you no longer could just slap a card in without ripping the computer apart. Doesn't that suck? So I'll have to find the other screw for this in a second. But let's turn this PC. Let me show you a few other quirks of this machine while I'm on the back here. So, the SCSI port. This is not a normal SCSI port. This is a mini Centronics 50 pin. On the PC-98 and Japanese computers, this was standard. On most computers, this was not. And some of the last SCSI cards for the PC-98 replaced this port with the regular HD50 port. But unfortunately, you need to get a cable that's HD50 to this mini Centronics port if you want to hook up any SCSI device, which you can find on Yahoo Japan, but you can't really when you're looking on American or European eBay, because nobody used this connector. And then we've got a truly obscure connector, and this is the biggest problem people have with the PC-H98s aside from the reference disk, which this system unfortunately needs. So as you can see, this is a weird connector and it looks proprietary, doesn't it? It's not. It's a high-rose connector. I actually found on DigiKey the actual connector this thing needs, and I'll put a link in the description for anybody else who gets stuck in the same situation with the H98. But it's a high-rose connector, and it's actually red, blue, green. Not red, green, blue, it's red, blue, green. And then the sync lines are in this, and I'll also post a link to the pinout in the description as well. Other than that, the 1 meg floppy disk, this actually has an external floppy disk port, and usually it's based on 50-pin Centronics, but it's 50-pin mini Centronics here, and if you have a SCSI cable, it'll work if you hook up a 8-inch or 5 1/4 or 3 1/2-inch disc. Just remember, external floppy drives for the PC-98 are super expensive for a reason. We've got our serial, which is also another mini Centronics port, and a printer port, which is also mini Centronics. They really love their mini Centronics ports here, people, and everybody hates it. And so I'm going to move it to this side now. We've got our hard card. I'm going to pull this out right now because right now I'm having an issue where I actually tried a blue SCSI in here and the hard card did not work. I'm not even joking. The hard card on this thing did not work no matter what I did. I wasn't able to see a hard disk drive. I think it might be something to do with the blue SCSI because basically the problem with these blue SCSIs is they're not always compatible with the systems. But the big problem with this blue SCSI, or not the blue SCSI, the card, this is one of those cards that only wants NEC branded drives. I might try again with a SCSI to SD in the future. I have a feeling the SCSI to SD might work better, it might not work better, but that'll be another day when I have more money to throw at this thing. And now that I've got all 3 screws out, believe it or not, PC-98s used hard cards. They used hard cards well after they died elsewhere. And that's what this is. It's a hard card. And it actually has a ROM as well, which is the ROM that the system uses to configure itself. This is probably internally NESA as well. I'm fairly sure this is. Because it automatically configures itself if you pop this in and you load the reference disk. This is a ROM board. There's actually several ROM boards. There's one here, and there's one of them. One of these cards is a ROM board too. But this thing is loaded with mask ROMs. There's one here, and then there's a few on the CPU board too. So this thing is loaded with mask ROMs. And let me point out which card is which. This is the RAM board. This has RAM sims. This is the ROM board, I'm pretty sure. And then this is a video board, which adds in the 256 color capability this thing has. Because this thing can do, I think it can do like 1120 by 750 video. And this board lets it do 256 colors. And this board was standard on the later H98s, but not the older H98s. This was an upgrade for those earlier H98 models. So that's how the H98 does its color. And also, there's another E2GC chip on here, the E3GC. That's what this is called, E3GC for each chip. And I think that's probably where the E2 and E2GC comes from. Because that's what the name of this video subsystem is on the H98. There's also, I think there's also an advanced version of the GDC as well in here. But long story short, PC-98s have this weird video system where they've got this EGC chip normally, which is like a blitter and more colors and accelerated graphics. And then it also has, on top of that, the original PC-98 video chipset, which was two GDC chips working in a master and slave layout. And I'll demonstrate that to you when I turn this thing on. So let's hook this thing up. Alright, so let's take a look at these peripherals before I hook the PC-98 up. This is a PC-9800 series keyboard. I say that because that's what it says on the keyboard. Now these keyboards have different names based on which logo they have. This is the 9800 series, but then there were some that just had an NEC logo that were rubber domes. There were ones before this that had branding such as PC-9801, V9801U. Now these are pretty nice mechanical keyboards, and being that this was the last series of mechanical keyboard, it actually has the VF 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5 keys that a lot of programs didn't use. But in Windows, I haven't really used Windows too much on the PC-98 to use these two keys, but I wouldn't be shocked if these also mapped to F11 and F12. So you've got 15 function keys on this keyboard. The originals only had 10, and these are mapped to the boxes on the bottom of the screen on DOS. And you've also got your Japanese-specific keys. The problem with these mechanical PC-98 keyboards is simple. They love to just quit working switch-wise. And so this is probably because of storage, because, you know, this is Japan. A lot of these were probably stored in not-so-great places. And, you know, you've got years and years of salt water. Like, if you've ever had a computer from Florida, you know exactly what I'm talking about. Humidity and salt in the air. Boom. Not so good on this hardware. But there were a lot of these keyboards made. So if you get one that doesn't work, in typical PC-98 owner mindset, just buy another. Oh, and the switches are hard to clean, I should add. And that's what I've heard about these NEC switches. The mouse, on the other hand, was sourced from an American eBay seller. This is the classic Microsoft bus mouse. You know, the one that every old computer had at the time. Not the serial mouse, the bus mouse. That's what it says on the bottom. And then right here we've got ourselves a hard disk. An I/O data 2 gig hard disk with an NEC hard disk in it. So it works with old stuff as well. So let's fire this thing up and see what it does. First we'll turn on the hard disk, which isn't going to spin up until power's applied, because that's what a lot of these SCSI disks are like. And we're going to plug this thing in and turn it on. Alright, so I've got the perfect monitor hooked up to the PC-98, the NEC multi-sync. These are perfect LCDs if you get an old PC-98 because they will display every resolution you throw at them. So, let's turn this on. And I'm actually going to turn this on in high-res mode just to show you what it looks like because I can't get DOS to boot other than from a floppy disk. So the hard disk spins up. And what it's going to do is throw a tantrum because I've switched around cards. Gotta love allergies. So what it's doing now is telling me that the configuration's changed and I have to insert the reference disk. So what I gotta do is I have to find the reference disk first of all, which is somewhere in my stack of disks. It's right here. And this is a 5¼ inch disc that I found the image for on the internet. Now the thing with these discs is you basically have to find the image for them or else you're going to have a bad time with these machines. So you put the disc in, you press enter, and you can hear the relays click in for the drive. So it's detected my cards. And if you want to get into setup to change it, you have to hold down the help key. And if you see the memory count, you have to reset it again while holding down the help key. Now all PC-98s with the setup in the ROM have you hold down help to get into the menu, and you can basically change the dip switches, which are in software on this machine, and you can change the CPU speed, along with, I forget what that option is, but you have to keep the reference disk in there, and you have to select that option to get into the reference disk. Now the reference disk on this machine allows you to configure assigned C-bus addresses. So we go here, and I unfortunately have to figure out what I set this to. Alright, the good thing is I wrote down what the settings were for this card, so I'm going to have to pick INT2. And then I'll have to go to I/O and I'll have to enter in all the I/O addresses, which is 0770, 77F. Then I'm going to have to do 1770, 177F. And then the next one is 0888, 088F. And then these are where I could put in like ROMs and stuff. So once I set, which I'm going to ignore, and then I'm also going to go, I have to switch it to, and it's currently whining because the IRQ for that is conflicting. So I have to go to here, and I have to change it to a different int, like, let's do this. Still complaining. Yep, that's typical PC-98 experience right there. So what I found out was wrong was there's an IRQ conflict between the network card and the mouse. Only in high resolution mode though. In normal resolution, no problem, because the mouse uses a different IRQ in normal resolution mode. Why? PC-98. I mean, there's a lot of things about the PC-98 that just don't make sense, and that's one of them. Is why high resolution mode would change so many things. In fact, this also wasn't the only PC-98 to have high resolution mode. There were multiple PC-98 models at the high end to have high resolution mode. So the problem I'm having here is, it might be related to that, it might not be, though I didn't have this problem before, is that the system will just not boot in high resolution mode. I mean, unless I use a floppy disk, of course. So it's doing nothing, but if I switch it to normal res mode, and press the reset switch, it'll boot right up. Just watch. Which is kind of a shame, because I wanted to poke around with high resolution mode on this thing, but I guess that'll have to wait until I can really debug it, or run into somebody who knows a bit more about these machines, because these machines are very obscure in the West. Might be because I'm using DOS 6.2, I might have to use DOS 5.0, but I'll be getting, one day I'll get a different PC-98 that can do that mode and mess around with that there. But until then, we've got ourselves a PC-98. Because in normal res mode, it'll boot. The SCSI card just takes a while to think. You gotta be kidding me. This SCSI card really does not want to work today. And that's the problem I've been having too with this H98, is some of the stuff on this thing is just so unstable, so jank, that it just doesn't want to do anything. And I've got the drive cabled, I've got all that hooked up, and it's doing nothing. But it's definitely reading the drive, because I saw the light blink and I heard it click a little. So I had to put the original C-Bus SCSI card I had in there back in. You know why? Because with these old computers and SCSI in general, you can't really switch out SCSI cards once you've already installed an OS onto the drive with many of these PC cards. And the reason for that is simple. These SCSI cards write out info in a very specific way, and each card doesn't handle it the same way, especially when it comes to larger drives. But now it boots. I just had to disable LAN Manager because LAN Manager eats up RAM. Let's start up Win and see if Windows works. Don't know why the video is corrupted a little. That's very strange. I might have to reseat some boards. Well, what do you know? The auxiliary video board, the one I pointed out, was loose, because once I reseated it, it just works now. Because that board provides 256 color support. And I think it uses 2 video chips to do that, because that was doing the whole stripe pattern. But now, check this out. Let's go to Control. Let's go to Next. This is a horrible monitor interface, but look at this. Wait for it. 1024 by 768 with 256 colors on Windows. Hate this monitor stand. Look at this. Can you believe it? It just works. But you can see there's this weird drawing effect that it sort of does. we go to where one of these should be video. But you can see that really cool effect when you close Windows out. See that again? Very, very aesthetic. And it mostly does it over here. Then it quit doing that. It's very, very interesting how it draws this. But let's play a game on here. Solitaire, baby. In 1024 by 1068. But what if we want to play a game that uses this video hardware? Well, we can too. So here's one of the few games that actually uses the video hardware of this machine. Actually, it was in games. Stupid me. Hate this keyboard. I didn't want to load Windows. This keyboard sucks. Oh my god. But as you can see, this video chip still thankfully works. This is like not even the first time I've had to reseat stuff with this PC-98. When I got this thing, it would just refuse to boot. So, as you can see here, there's actually files for 256 color, and there's also a file known as AGS-H98. Now, I wonder what that is. Well, the BAT file is supposed to normally load up the engine for the PC-H98, but it also has drivers for a few other video hardware setups, including the original EGC video setup. So, if we load the BAT file, which is which one is it? I think it's auto exec, that's it. Holy fuck, where the I gotta turn the volume down this thing. So this is one of the few games that actually uses the H98 video hardware. And as you can see, it's crashed. Seems like I gotta edit the audio XCC BAT file some in a way that means I can't run Windows. That's why I really don't like using the Yachty image, because it loads a lot of stuff into the memory, and then to get it to do more stuff, you have to edit auto exec. Now, a lot of times PC-98 games respond to memory issues by just crashing, or locking up, or throwing a cryptic error message, or just not even doing anything. So, what we're going to do is, we're just going to show you that this game has 256 color mode, because it's not translated, and considering the content of the game, I couldn't care about it much. So what we're going to do is, there's a mode in this game which throws you right into like 256 color graphics, and I'm going to do that right now because I'm not going to play a bunch of a game I can't even understand or don't really seem to care about just to get to the graphics. So what I'm going to do is, let's choose the one at the bottom, and boom, 256 color mode. Notice how it faded weirdly at the top. This is definitely H98 video mode. Very interesting how it switched between the video modes. Let's do that again. A little bit of graphic glitches up there. Very interesting video subsystem in my opinion. Shame there aren't really many documents on this. Let's reset the system. What we'll do is hit Control Graph Delete. And it's not working. So we gotta hit the reset switch. Might have hooked that. So there are not many games that use the PC-H98 video subsystem. There's only 3 of them. They only use them for, like, you know, cutscenes or CGs or whatever you want to call them. And even better, this is the best part, they're all NSFW games. Literally, this is the most PC-98 thing you can think of. 3 games with NSFW scenes, and they're the only games to make use of this weird video hardware, which has a very distinct look to it. But then again, the PC-98 video hardware in general has a distinct look to it. Case in point, let's load up File Manager. And what it does is, it displays background text using one of the GDCs, and then, like a background image, and then it displays text over it. And if I quit out of it, it stays on there. Pretty cool, isn't it? And you can see where they ripped the background from. Let's go to Games. Hate this keyboard. I hate this keyboard. I downloaded a few more that I'm never even going to play just to see if they did support the H98, and they don't. So, let's load some real games up, shall we? Let's load Toho, the meme game. Let's load up Start. Let's load up one because it's pretty clear which Toho is the best. And it doesn't exactly work on here, at least from when I tried it earlier. Oh, now it does. Now everybody knows that Toho 1 is the greatest Toho game ever made. And it's running really fast. This is on a 46, by the way, 16 megahertz. And it runs super, super fast. And then it runs super, super slow. Maybe this game wants a slower CPU, or maybe this is what Toho 1's like. And I like this one the best because it's basically the most interesting of all of them. The rest of them are just shmup, sort of. But then Toho 1 is like a mix of Breakout with sort of a shooting mechanic. It's some crazy stuff. And it's not easy to play on this jank keyboard or with the frame rate being all over the place. Let's reset it. And then I quit it by just pushing the stop key. Funny how that works. Then you load a later Toho game, and it's weird. Very slow. Very, very slow. Because this is only a 16 megahertz 486. Even the menu is slow on here. And then you start the game, and it runs slow. Like, you gotta see how slow this is. No, it's not so slow now, and then the second stuff comes on screen, it just slows down, and then speeds up again. These aren't even, like, the complex parts of the game, it's running slow. Gives a shit, I'm tired, I don't feel like playing Toho. I don't even know which keys quit. I'm gonna hit reset to get out of this. You know, you always gotta have a reset button on your PC-98, people. Now it's time to look at one more PC-98 game that's probably installed on every PC-98 these days. You know. I've got Smart Drive installed on here, so it's loading so much faster. Don't even think about playing this game without Smart Drive. The soundtrack's a bit different if you have a 2203, but it's widely known to have one of the best soundtracks on the PC-98 platform. Seriously, don't even play this game without Smart Drive. If you don't play this game with Smart Drive on, or play it without it, you're just going to see the loading. You're just going to hear the disc. And there's also an effect it's trying to do right now where it syncs up the music with what's going on the screen. And it can't do this when you don't have Smart Drive, or your system's too slow. And it's already desyncing now because this hardware is kind of old. But this game's, at least the intro sequence, is pretty clever because it tries to sync up what's going on with the music. And it does it a little bit differently based on how fast your PC-98 is. Also, I heard the first half of this game is really good, but then the second half just falls off, and the remake sucks. That's just what I've heard about this game. But it's a visual novel for just about any PC-98. It's not an H98 compatible game. I'm only loading it because I want an excuse to listen to the music, which is clearly the best part of the game. That and the sprite art. This is... I've noticed this actually syncs better on this lower end machine than it does on my WinChip 200. But you gotta load Smart Drive up, or else this game's 100% unplayable. Or at least loading time-wise, it's unbearable. And this is a translated version, by the way. You can find this on archive.org in case you want to play this game. And this game, I've heard, has lots and lots of dialogue. So it's kind of impressive that it's been translated. But the cool thing about PC-98 fan translations is you'll notice they're all using the system font for every game pretty much. Because a lot of games used the standard Japanese font. So when these games were translated, they used the system font essentially for English as well. Very comfy main menu. And it actually tells you what soundboard you have. If you have stereo sound, you can choose between the 2203 and 2608 soundtrack. You can also choose your wallpaper in this game too. But it's pretty clear that the best wallpaper was the first one. I mean, the first one is the one that pretty much everybody associates with the PC-98 just because that's the typical one in the Yachty image. Now, everybody knows that for the PC-98 has the most gripping and emotional dialogue of any video game ever made. And if you don't know what I mean, well, you'll know what I mean. You know, you're just talking, and then all of a sudden, the dialogue turns into, well, you know. All of a sudden it turns into, it goes from the game character's angst to oh my god, to something that was written by a kid on Xbox Live. I'm in school and oh man, I'm gonna fuck some bitches. Yeah, 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 yeah. Yeah, I'm gonna pick some girls. I'm gonna play this PC-98. I'm gonna get some girls by playing my PC-98. Oh man. And this is literally what the dialogue is in this game. It is some deep, emotional stuff right here, people. This is 30 out of 10 dialogue. Yeah, I think the PC-98 is the greatest gaming platform ever created, wouldn't you say? Yeah. I think I'm done here for the diet gamers. But, let's focus on what really matters. It's that sound card, baby. I love the PC-98 soundboard. Holy shit. And that's what you gotta see, gamers. This soundboard. The soundboard, baby. That YM2203C. That's all that needs to be said, gamers. Thanks for watching. Subscribe for more, and I hope you enjoyed this look at a weird Japanese computer and this FM music.